Man, I hate this. This is annoying. I like bumped my Apple Watch and the zoom got all messed up. Man, this sucks. Guys, there is no need to worry, no need to panic. What's that in my pocket? Check this out, check this out. After years of searching, finally, Beanie Baby Frog. He's right here. Look at him. You can see him right there. He's there. All right, anyway, yeah, I got Beanie Baby Frog. He's gonna sit right here until I decide on some better looking headwear. Anyway, hello. It's me. Check out the lighting in here, man. I got like these new studio lights now. I'm a new superhero. I'm printer paper man. I'm glue stick guy. I'm white people lad. So a while back, I posted a poll to you guys that are subscribed to my channel about what video I should make next. And the video that won out was frog TikTok, basically doing like a review of frog type TikToks, kind of like I did previously on my normal reptile TikTok. Second place was a reptile room tour. Third and last place was a video about beginner reptiles. So you may be asking, Ben, Bonji, Brandon, whatever you want to call me, why are you not making the frog TikTok video like was democratically voted on by your fan base? And well, I'll tell you, I spent a long time going through frog TikTok and copying my favorite frog TikToks and all that kind of stuff. And there's some fun stuff to watch. However, none of it is really good for a commentary type video. And I don't want to put out a crappy video where I just show you a bunch of frog TikToks and be like, yeah, that was funny. I mean, like, what am I supposed to say to a video like this? Yeah, I mean, it's just not something I can really comment on, like at all, unfortunately. So maybe next time, if you want to send me some cool frog TikToks, you can @them to me on TikTok. This is my TikTok. Thank you to everyone that subscribed to my channel. I know the content's been coming slowly. I feel like I've apologized for that in every single video. Maybe at some point I should stop, but I don't know. That's what's on my mind. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being subscribed. Let's get right into it. So this is a video about the best beginner reptiles that you can have. I have kind of like a lukewarm take on the concept of beginner reptiles. The idea that beginner reptiles exist, right, assumes that there's like this sequential list of difficulty to reptile keeping. Let's say that you want to take care of a black throat monitor. Now, to take care of a black throat monitor, which is an advanced level reptile according to a lot of people, you would need to start with a beginner, right? You would take care of a leopard gecko, and then you move your way up to a bearded dragon, and then maybe you move your way up to an iguana, and then boom, then you get to the black throat monitor. What that fails to recognize is that leopard geckos, bearded dragons, iguanas, and black throat monitors, while yes, on varying levels of difficulty, clearly it's easier to take care of a leopard gecko than it is a black throat monitor. Taking care of a leopard gecko does not prepare you for taking care of a black throat monitor. So hence the idea, for the most part, mind you, of beginner reptiles is it's not what we believe it is, that you don't need to get this lower level reptile in order to take care of this higher level reptile. Basically, I find the concept of beginner reptiles somewhat reductive. It basically tells people who are interested in getting in the reptile hobby because of whatever animal, oh, I need to get this before I can get this, which is just not true.
I want to interrupt really quick here and clarify, because while editing this video, I kind of noticed I'm talking myself in circles. My argument essentially boils down to, if there is a specific reptile that you really, really want, and it happens to be an advanced level reptile, it is not a requirement that you take care of a beginner level reptile before you get that desired advanced reptile. Now, keeping beginner reptiles can certainly be helpful in preparing you to care for that advanced level reptile. For example, pretty much all reptiles require you to regulate the heating, lighting, and humidity levels of their environments, and that's not something that most pet owners are familiar with dealing with before they get into keeping their first reptile. But I would say, as long as that you are adequately over-prepared to care for whatever reptile it is that you want as your first reptile, I say just go for it. It is not required to start with a beginner animal that you're not going to enjoy in order to take care of the animal that you really, really want.
It should be noted, though, I do want to acknowledge that you can interpret a bit of a tier system when taking care of reptiles that are very similar to each other. For example, if you're not familiar with the behavior, body language, and feeding response of monitor lizards, taking care of an Aki monitor is a really good introduction before you get into keeping other larger, difficult monitor species. You know, taking care of an easy monitor will actually be a good gateway in, but that's just a very specific example. You know, taking care of a bearded dragon is not necessarily going to prepare you to take care of an iguana. Do your research and prepare yourself to get that animal. If the first animal you want is a bearded dragon, great, there's plenty of resources out there. If the first animal that you want to get is an abronia, do your research, be prepared, and then take care of it. There should be no problem of you taking care of an abronia as your first pet lizard if you're truly prepared to keep and handle it, which should be the expectation that we set for taking care of any reptile ever, really. The first pet reptile I ever had was a sulcata tortoise that was bought for me by my parentals. It died after like a year because I just didn't take care of it properly. One, like I was like 8 years old. I didn't know how to take care of a sulcata tortoise. Two, it really wasn't me doing the care for it. I was a child. It was a gift that was thrust onto me and he just didn't survive. He didn't die necessarily because sulcata tortoises are just these impossible reptiles to take care of and that they're not really animals that should be considered beginner reptiles. It's just because no one in my family was prepared to do it. It was an irresponsible thing that was done in the best interest of their son. Whatever, now I'm taking care of my reptiles pretty decently, I think. A common question that I get a lot of times on this channel is, what beginner reptile do you recommend? I really like reptiles, but I don't know necessarily what to get. And I feel very conflicted about this statement / this question because each according to their needs, right? I think that's what Mark said. Everyone is gonna have their like a different idea of what they want in a pet. There might be someone who's super passionate about taking care of reptiles that really wants a reptile that they can handle all the time. So maybe that person decides that they want to get a Pac-Man frog because, you know, frogs are super popular right now. Pac-Man frogs are one of the most popular species of frog. They get it because it's been recommended to them as a beginner reptile or beginner frog, amphibian, whatever. Reptile is just going to be analogous for all herptiles in this situation. And then they get it, they start handling it, they notice it doesn't really like to be handled, and then maybe it ends up perishing because they didn't wear gloves while handling it or whatever. Every person has their own reason for taking care of reptiles. Sometimes it's for handling, sometimes because you like to admire it, or maybe you just like the maternal, paternal, whatever, instinct that you, vibes that you get from taking care of another animal. I don't know, everyone has their own reason. I just like it because reptiles are cool, and occasionally I like handling them, even though, you know, the majority of my animals I don't really take out of their cage all that much. And like going back to this question about what beginner reptile I should get, I see a lot of people in the reptile hobby will be quick to answer, oh, bearded dragon, corn snake, leopard gecko, like those are that's like the Petco stock that they just start throwing at you. Now, granted, most keepers who have been in the hobby for a long time will always have their pocket picks to recommend you, like maybe something that isn't quite as well known or gets a bad reputation that they maybe want to improve. They'll always have those pocket picks of reptiles to recommend, but pretty much every list that you find online or on YouTube is gonna contain all of these reptiles that have been talked to for death. I'm not necessarily saying that these are bad beginner reptiles because most of them aren't. In fact, most of them are great reptiles to take care of if you're not really familiar with all the trappings of reptile keeping. But that being said, you shouldn't be discouraged to get the animal you want because these are the beginner animals that we know and love, and the reptile hobby culture has told us that's what we want. Bearded dragons, for example, get recommended like crazy because they're super hardy, they have a very diverse diet, they're easy to find at pretty much any pet store, and they're very cheap, and they're very forgiving. I had a friend whose cousin had a bearded dragon, and that bearded dragon ended up in my custody. That thing did not have a heat light for years, right? And in his cage when I was given, he was given no water bowl, he was given no places to climb, no places to hide, he's just sitting, he was just kind of sitting like this in his cage all the time. And that was really sad, and that bearded dragon clearly was not taken care of very well. There's poop everywhere, his nails were grown in like curly cues, they'd never been trimmed. And I adopted him and I took him in and he was fine after that. He was given abysmal care. And bearded dragons, like, they're not exactly the best beginner reptiles either. Like, they have an incredibly varied diet that you need to start by feeding them a crap ton of insects as babies, and their diet gradually shifts to buying vegetables, which can be kind of expensive unless you're farming them yourself. And then you gotta brumate them sometimes, you know, put them down for like their little reptile hibernation. You gotta provide them with UVB lights and heat lights and all that kind of stuff. They're not exactly the best of what you would assume to be beginner reptiles, right? Do away with this fallacy of beginner reptiles. As you'll see, I do have some reptiles of my own to recommend. I think the reptiles that I've listed here are a really good gateway to the hobby if you want to learn certain things. Granted, this is all from my personal experience. I have only kept a handful of species throughout my 12 years or so being interested in reptile keeping. So it is a pretty limited list, and I'm sure there's some better ones out there. Here are the top 5 most underrated best beginner reptiles Bonji YouTuber 2022 edition. Few disclaimers before I get into it. I'm not going to talk about any of these guys in the video because there are plenty of videos of other YouTubers talking about that, so just go watch them. I'll link some of my favorites down below. I'm not doing full care guides for any of these animals because those will probably be videos of their own, and also if I did, this video would be like over an hour long. And lastly, the difficulty of care for these animals is going to differ slightly based on your geography, right? Because one of the key facets of reptile keeping is maintaining proper humidity as well as maintaining proper temperature. Taking care of a Chinese water dragon in Marysville, Ohio versus like Singapore, gonna be very different. So anyway, here's my recommendations of my favorite beginner reptiles and their reasons why I think they're great beginner reptiles. The first recommendation is the blue-tongued skink. And now you guys probably saw this coming because blue-tongued skinks as of recently have gained so much traction and they're just super popular now. But it wasn't always like that. They weren't quite as popular. I say back in the day, but really that was like 10 years ago. And they're probably even less popular before that. This is Teddy, by the way. This is my friend's lizard. He's shedding right now, so I don't want to keep him out too long. Plus he's on meds from a little respiratory infection that he had. But Teddy is a Maroc blue-tongued skink. There are numerous different localities of blue-tongued skink, from the northern blue-tongue to the Irian Jaya blue-tongue. I'm gonna put him back now. He's kind of antsy. But I recommend blue-tongued skinks because they are just, specifically the Merauke whatever versions of them, because they are just so fun. Like, they're substantial, they're large, and they're strong, but not so much that they're going to hurt or overpower you. They're not prone to biting ever, unless you put your finger in their mouth where they think you're food. And if they bite you, it just kind of feels like pressure anyway. They're incredibly hardy. I don't believe their humidity and heat requirements are as taxing as many of the other species of blue tongues, but they're just really good animals overall. They have a nice varied diet as well, so you can feed them pretty much anything, including wet dog food, which is not something that's super common with lots of pet reptiles, but being able to just buy that pre-canned stuff, as long as it has the appropriate nutritional value, give it to them with some supplements, that's pretty solid. I think that they're pretty easy to handle. Despite them having somewhat sharp claws, it's a good introduction to get you ready for others like medium, moderate sized species of lizards that are probably gonna tear up your skin a little bit when they get to you. Second one that I'm gonna recommend is everybody's favorite, the White's tree frog. Not a reptile, it's an amphibian. I don't need to say a whole lot about White's tree frogs. I've made enough videos about them. You can go check them out. But White's tree frogs are good for those that are looking to get into frog keeping. And this is what I've heard from my friends that keep more frogs other than White's tree frogs. Because White's tree frogs are very, very hardy for a species of tree frog. Tree frogs generally need very high humidity. Normally you just don't want to touch tree frogs at all because their skin is very permeable, and frogs in general are just very fragile creatures. But White's tree frogs, they're built like tanks. They don't need their humidity quite as high. They eat like crazy. They will never miss an opportunity to consume some food and just stuff it into their face with their sticky little paws. But I think they are actually very, very good introductory species to frogs, because it'll teach you that, yeah, these are frogs that can handle being held without gloves on the occasion. But it's definitely not something that you should do all the time and for extended periods of time. You know, teaching newer keepers boundaries with their animals, and that, yeah, you're gonna need to change your approach to and sanitize yourself to take care of certain animals and all that kind of stuff. Okay, next one on the list is the Ackie monitor. You might be thinking, but Ben, you just said bearded dragons aren't the best beginner reptiles, but Ackie monitors are a lot harder to take care of than bearded dragons. Well, that's your opinion, and my opinion is the opposite, actually. I have an Ackie monitor. His name is Cracky. I've had him for a little over 2 years now. He's a beautiful specimen. I love him. He's awesome. Ackie monitors just are an excellent beginner reptile species if you're looking to start taking care of monitor lizards, which in my opinion are the most interesting species of lizard out there besides maybe tegus. And the Aki monitors are incredibly small. They're very manageable in size. They're very forgiving as far as handling. Their claws aren't super sharp because most of the time they'll be dulled out from burrowing. Cracky's bit me maybe once or twice and it's drawn blood, but it's not been something to freak out about, and he just let go immediately after. But unlike a lot of species of monitors, Aki monitors are very easy to handle because of their size, and because you start handling them so much at such a young age, it's very easy to tame them down. They, like I said before, they stay pretty small, so you don't need an enormous enclosure for them. Usually something about 4 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot will usually do the trick for an adult Aki monitor. And while they may have intense heating and lighting requirements, it's not really something that is very difficult to come by. You buy a thermostat, you buy a cluster of heat bulbs, you set them down, you forget about it, basically. They're from Australia, and they like to bask on these very hot rock outcroppings, and thus they enjoy very intense heat, and they also like burying themselves from the intense heat. They have a crazy appetite and an insane feeding response. It's like they've never been fed before when you're feeding them as little guys. As of lately, Cracky, my Aki monitor, his appetite has slowed down a little bit because of the colder months and the fact that he is basically a full-fledged adult now. Overall, Aki monitors, totally would recommend. All my friends go crazy for Cracky. Get an Aki monitor if you have the money. They're pretty widely available as well, so all the more reason. And the last one I'm gonna recommend is not one species, it's actually multiple species: king snakes and milk snakes. While I do believe that corn snakes, right, are the penultimate species of snake, I love my corn snake so much. His name's Apollo, he's amazing. He's like almost 12 years old now, 11, 10 years old. I don't even know how old he is. I think king snakes and milk snakes don't get quite as much appreciation for how good of pets they make. I currently keep a Mexican black king snake. Her name is Nyx. I've had her for, I don't know if it's a year or 2 years actually. I don't know. She had some health problems at first. When I got her, the other owner didn't really take too great care of her, but I didn't really need to take her to the vet or anything to get her to bounce back. King snakes and milk snakes, they grow to a pretty substantial size. They don't have the most intense heating and lighting requirements or humidity or all that kind of stuff. Give them a cage with some bare bones substrate, give them 2 hides and a water bowl, you're good to go. Granted, you should probably make your setup look a little bit nicer than that just because that's pretty cool. But if that's not something you're into, your king snake and your milk snake, they're not really gonna mind. They come in a huge variety of different colors. They all stay around the same size, but there are some species that grow much larger than others. So it's up to you to sort of choose which loadout you want to get for a king snake. And they're pretty easy to find as well. They're pretty prolific as far as breeding is concerned. King snakes overall, I'd say they're a good beginner buy. They do nip a little. I do notice that king snakes and milk snakes bite a little bit more often than their corn snake counterparts do, but that's primarily just when, you know, they're little babies and that kind of stuff. So that's the video. Those are the beginner reptiles I recommend. What do you think of my picks? Do you think they're good? Do you think they're bad? Do you want to see more Beanie Baby Frog? Let me know in the comments down below. I want to make another frog video, but I'm sort of starved for content ideas around frog. I just feel like there's both so much that can be done and not enough that has been done. So if there's something about frogs that you want me to talk about, let me know, because I had a whole lot of fun doing the Why Do We Like Frogs video, where I read articles about why people in the media think that us silly Gen Z kids and all that love frogs. I found that to be a very interesting video, so I might do something like that again. But yeah, let me know what you think. Thank you for watching. Beanie Baby Frog says peace out.